Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So we're coming back to Ice Barrier, which I actually meant to do at some point during the last season, but just never really ended up getting around to it. So instead, we're just coming back to it here now into the beginning of Season 34. So the games that you're going to see are going to be in Master Rank actually from the end of last season, but yeah, still had some pretty good games, had a lot of fun playing this deck, and was reminded of just how good it is. Ice Barrier has already started to fall off in popularity, which is to be expected, of course. Like, any new deck that comes out in a selection pack, no matter how good or maybe not it is, you know, it's going to see a decent bit of play, and then as time goes on, the kind of hype or popularity behind it will wear off. But funnily enough, this doesn't just happen to off-meta decks. If you look at, like, Rescue Ace, for example, Rescue Ace has, like, 1.7% popularity rating on Untapped, and that is wildly low for how good that deck is for debatably a Tier 1, if not one of the top Tier 2 decks of the format. So, I kind of try to look at it in a bit more of an optimistic way, that kind of popularity spike, right, when a deck first comes out, because you might think like, oh, you know, Ice Barrier only did well when it first came out because it was, you know, backed by new deck hype, right? You can say the same for like any number of newer and also more off-meta strategies like Valmonica, like Ancient Gear, like Ragnaraka, so on and so forth. But the way that I actually choose to see it is that, you know, these decks, their power level, you know, when they're topping events when they first come out, isn't like artificially inflated, right? Because there are still people out there playing the top meta decks, and this, you know, these more off-meta strategies are still winning and doing well in spite of that. So, you know, I think that really what it shows when a deck has like that initial popularity boom is the true potential of what that deck is capable of. And, you know, again, some people might argue that, oh, well, you know, this deck only topped a tournament or hit Master 1, you know, a significant amount of the time because, again, a lot of people were on it. But, again, it's not like these decks are not facing stuff like Yubel and Fire King Snake Eye and so on and so forth, Tear Lament, Kashira, all these other decks that are, you know, supposedly supposed to, like, you know, keep them down, right? So, the way that I choose to see this is that, you know, if you have that kind of off-meta deck that you're a little bit hesitant about trying out on ladder, I'd say go for it, because odds are, if you build it and play it well, and of course, with any deck there comes the time of the grind of getting up there on ladder, but you will be able to hit Master, if not Master 1, with a surprising amount of decks, you know, even like lower rogue decks, which I think a lot of people, myself included, honestly, would consider Ice Barrier to be a lower rogue deck, so. But anyway, enough yapping about that. Let's talk about Ice Barrier itself. So, for this build, I will say, ideally you should be on to Lancia. I only own the one copy, and while it is optimal to play two, and I definitely have no shortage of UR craft materials, at the same time, this isn't a deck I feel like I play often enough to warrant spending like 30 UR materials on it. You know, a lot of people ask how I save up so many, because I don't really spend money in this game at all. Every now and then when there's a sales pack, but not even every time. Like this latest Duelist Cup sales pack, I didn't buy into at all. It's really only once, like maybe every 3 or 4 months, that I actually put a little bit of money again into those sale gems. But one of the ways that I kind of like save up UR craft points is by not necessarily going all in on decks every single time, right? Again, I love Ice Barrier, I like playing it, but do I play it enough to spend 30 UR CP on a second Lancia? I don't really think so. And honestly, the one Lancia is enough to get you through, you know, the few games you'll play of it every single season. So that's one of many ways in which you can kind of like save up on UR dust. But if I were to craft a second Lancia, I'd probably drop the Zealantis. It's not that Zealantis is bad in this deck, but it's not going to really be an OTK a lot of the time the same way it is in like Fire King Snake Eye or just Snake Eye decks in general. But it is a good Link 4 monster to go into if you're waterlocked and don't really have many synchro options. The thing is, that specific situation doesn't really come up that often at all. So yeah, if I had a second Lancia, I'd probably just cut the Zealantis and slot it in. But another UR that you could potentially play for this deck that wouldn't be bad, but as you can see, I also haven't gone out of my way to craft, is the Gradle Dragon. This is a pretty good level 8 synchro in general for water decks. It's a good reactive tool because you get to blow stuff up, and then if it does get destroyed, you can bring back any of your water monsters. Its effects are going to be negated, but it's still nice that it's a body that replaces itself. But again, more so than the second Lancia, you know. I don't really feel like I play this deck enough to spend the UR dust on it, but I would definitely prioritize the second Lancia before spending UR on the Great Dragon here. So, let's see, what's different in the main deck? Oh, in the past, I have actually been playing, actually, let me just pull up Ice Barrier cards in general. So in the past, I was playing the Warlock of the Ice Barrier because it didn't require the discard that Spellbreaker did. However, I decided to try out the Spellbreaker because it is more popular, which usually means it's a better tech. Not always the case, but I wanted to see if that was the case here. And I liked Spellbreaker a fair bit. The 2000 defense was actually quite a bit more relevant than expected. One thing I do dislike about the Warlock is that it has to stay face up on the field, and it is a body that's really easy to battle over. Not only is Spellbreaker a little more resilient, but this is actually a lingering effect, so even if you like sync with the Spellbreaker, or if it gets destroyed or something during your opponent's turn, the Spell Lock will still be in effect, which is very, very nice. So, but otherwise we're on like pretty much everything you would expect to see. 3 of all of our more important cards. Hexa you could actually only play 2 of, because there were definitely times where I opened too many of this. I think one of the games we're going to see I actually opened all 3, but it is still technically a starter for some amount of plays, so I do like it for that reason. Like, you can normal this, pitch the Mirror Mage, and then add and then summon the Georgius, and then use Hexa F to, or use, the Mirror Mage F to sack the Hexa and then start making plays, right? But Revealer is the best opener to start with, by far. 2 of the Speaker, because it's a good extender, but by itself doesn't really do a whole lot. The Graveyard Token effect is actually pretty nice, because one thing that is very important to note about Lancia in particular is that Lancia is the Ancestral Dragon of the Ice Mountain, not Barrier, though. So you do need to have another Ice Barrier monster for, a lot of your stuff to go off. Not necessarily like General Raiho. This is actually just a pretty generic Floodgate, but so a lot of the time you do want to make sure that you're having some amount of Ice Barrier cards in play, and the token itself is actually an Ice Barrier monster, so it's not bad to leave behind the token for Speaker, or for, like, if you have a leftover Mirror Mage token, that usually ends up being completely fine. I don't know, the build itself is fairly standard. Oh, we're also playing General Wayne. I wasn't on this last time. This card is really helpful in certain matchups. It's a little difficult to summon sometimes by its own effect. It's pretty much going second card in that regard, but level 5 non-tuner body is not, irrelevant. The stat, the 2100 attack points, also not irrelevant. The search is pretty good, and again, this first effect can be particularly useful against, like, Pearly, for example, right? Because then all their Pearly stuff's going to get banished, not go to the graveyard, and they can't copy with Pearly. And, there are definitely other decks that definitely want their spell and trap cards to hit the yard, so decided to test it out. Have not been super disappointed by it, so I think I would keep the General Wayne in moving forward. But, yeah, I mean, for the rest of the main of the extra deck, it's a pretty standard Ice Barrier deck, so I think we're going to go ahead and just start taking a look at these duels and see what we got here. Alright, so our first opponent's actually going to be on Spellbook Turbo. The idea is, of course, we're going to cycle through a bunch of Spellbook cards, and it looks like their big spellcaster they're trying to end on with Judgment is a Jowgen. So we're going to go first. It's going to show a pretty good going first setup here, and unfortunately for our opponent, this is a pretty bad matchup for them for reasons you might be able to guess, but I'll show here shortly. So I'm going to use Revealer to pitch Hexa to summon Hexa. Hexa then sends the Mirror Mage. Pretty typical opening line with the Revealer here. Now, normally I would add the Georgius, but because we already have it, as well as wins over the Ice Barrier, I get to instead just add the Speaker for an extender body here. So I'm going to start off by going into the Lancia. Can't lead with the Baron here, unfortunately, because we are waterlocked with the Revealer, but I can use the winds here to summon out the Spellbreaker, and I summoned the Revealer here because I thought I was going to have to send, or not the Revealer, the Speaker rather. I summoned that off the winds because I thought I was going to have to send the Speaker in order to be able to use the Spellbreaker effect, but I totally forgot that Revealer also has the Graveyard effect, that if you would discard or send a card from the hand to the graveyard to activate an Ice Barrier monster effect, you can banish this card instead of one of those cards. So I actually didn't have to do this. I could have left either the token up or just summoned a different Ice Barrier monster, but it's fine either way. It's not really that big of a deal, so we're going to sync off the Mirror Mage and the token into the Coral Dragon. From there we can sync the Coral Dragon and the Speaker for the Gamir Agony. This is going to add not only some protection to our end board, but also a little bit more interaction. Of course, the Gamir Agony, for those unfamiliar, not only protects my monsters from being destroyed or banished by my opponent's card effects, but if I chain to any kind of a card with this effect, I can banish that card. It doesn't even have to be the type of effect that would destroy or banish my stuff, right? So that's pretty cool. And of course, the Spellbreaker, as mentioned before, is going to be that lingering spell lock, which unfortunately for my opponent, not ideal for them. Yeah, as soon as I saw that spell book and them adding King Sark here, I was like, oh no. Oh, honey. I guess Imseti is also a spellcaster too. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, unfortunately, there's just not really anything they can do here. This game was more to show off just what a kind of typical turn 1 combo line for Ice Bearer looks like. This was more of a bit of an extended combo line, again, because we opened so much with the hand here. But the combo line, you can still follow just summoning Revealer, activating the effect to summon Hexa, Hexa F, send a Mirror Mage add Georgius, special to Georgius F, bring back Mirror Mage, sync into Lancia, Mirror Mage F, send off the Hexa for the tokens. Then you can go Coral Dragon. Usually you would go into Dragite because you can only go up to level 8 and then get the draw. But again, here, because we had the extra body, we were able to go into Gamir Agronine instead and then get the extra draw. But the spell Trap Negate is even debatably better than Gamir Agronine's effect. I think they're pretty comparable in terms of how good of interactions they are. So, all right, there is that first duel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Alright, so this game we're going to be up against Voiceless Voice, and it is yet another deck on Jowgen. This one, of course, however, using the Sanctifier lock to try to turbo out the Jowgen. So, people have said Jowgen should be banned, people have said Sanctifier should be banned. I say, why not both? So, anyway. We're going to be going second here. Our opponent's going to activate the Branded Regain to set up the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph, and thankfully for us here, they don't really have any plays. And honestly, a lot of the reason they don't have plays, I suspect, is because they've loaded their deck up with like so many of these tech cards against the meta. Not just the Sanctifier engine, but our opponent's deck is also on like Bishiels, which I guess aren't like inherently bad, right? But like when you try to do all of this stuff in one deck, you do kind of run the risk of like, you know, here our opponent's on like, what is this, 45 cards? I think it's for a deck like Voiceless Voice, it's really trying to turbo out their combo consistently. You know, I think you gotta have a lot of good reasons to go over 40. I guess is what I'm getting at. So here I'm gonna lead with the Medallion, which does bait out the Ash Blossom. Beautiful, we love to see that. Definitely do not want to get a Revealer hit with the Ash Blossom here, so that's why we led with the Medallion. Just gonna normal summon the Revealer. They're gonna activate Maxi here, but you'll notice that I went straight to battle phase. Now here, I think my opponent misplayed with the Maxi pretty hard here. This is something that, again, I've talked about this video quite a bit, but my hand trap guide, it's the pinned video on my channel. So if you click on my channel link in the, you know, below the video here, it'll be the first video you see there. One thing I talk a lot about is like not wasting your Max C, and this was just not a good time for my opponent to use the Max C here. They really should have just waited for me to activate the Revealer effect. That would have given them a guaranteed draw, and especially because they didn't play any cards at all during their turn. Well, I know their hand is like dead, right? They can't just make plays on its own, so why would I, you know, special summon and give them draws here? Instead, I'm going to give them 0 draws, battle, set the Impermanent Pass. I'm in a pretty good spot because I know even if they do top deck like a low or something, I can just Impermanent. And sure enough, they don't have anything here. So this is one of those situations where I would not play into Maxi going second. And again, my opponent continues to misplay by firing off the Maxi during the draw phase. Again, with the Revealer on the field, there is literally 0 reason to do this. They really should have just waited for me to activate the Revealer effect. One other thing that is making this a misplay here is that the opponent is giving me very heads-up information of how I need to play my turnout, right? Because I know I'm gonna be under the Max C. I can plan my turn accordingly, especially knowing that my opponent doesn't have anything else they can do, really. I suspect my opponent shotgunned the Max C because they're so desperate for draws here, but this desperation is super telegraphed. And again, really, in this situation, they could have just waited for me to discard off of the Revealer, but so my initial plan was like, I'll just normal summon Spellbreaker and move to battle, but then I realized, you know, I can actually get to Baron, I'm pretty sure, before I'm in nib range, right? Because this was 1, 2, 3, and then Baron is 4, yeah, so when debating on whether to go for the lethal through Maxi, that is the main thing that I always ask myself, is like, can I get there in such a way where I don't just get dunked on by Nibiru, right? And in this situation, we were able to find that route, again, by making sure we count our summons. Also, General Wayne's 2100 attack body was very, very helpful here. So this was a game where I did very much appreciate having it, but... yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, this game looked really one-sided, but if my opponent had just played their Maxis a little bit better, there was definitely a world where they would have gotten enough draws to find what they needed, be able to make plays, and then threaten my board state enough where I can't just, like, do whatever I want, you know? So, again, Maxis feels like a very, I activate this and auto-win kind of a card, and I see a lot of people saying, yeah, if my opponent resolves a Maxi, I always just concede, but there's so many situations in which Maxi does not automatically win you the game, and I think keeping a level head and persevering is, you know, best, and of course we'll have to play through it. Anyway, we have one more game that we're going to show off here, so let's finish with that one. Alright, so I can only really describe this deck as Horus OTK. My opponent let me go first, so they won the coin flip, but then chose for me to go. Well, yeah, I'll show that here. I was going to say, they chose to go second, so I already knew that something was up, and as you can see, our opening hand here is not the best, I guess. The Hex is all flocking to the Hex, but we're going to just lead by normal summoning that and then pitching the Mirror Mage, because we did thankfully open the Georgius and the Speaker here, so I'm going to go for the Freezing Chains to let me do some more additional Synchro summoning here. And I've actually not waterlocked myself because I didn't start with Revealer and I haven't used a Mirror Mage yet, so this is a game where I can actually lead with the Barrel Diffler, which is always nice. But yeah, I guess what I mean by Horus OTK is that it seems our opponent is trying to use cards like Lava Golem, Kaijus, Sphere Mode, Ra, Dark Hole, Raigeki to board wipe us, and then just summon like the 4 Horus monsters and then OTK that way. It's a pretty simple beatdown kind of a strategy. Definitely not ineffective, so... with the Freezing Chains, I get to bring back the Speaker and then go for another 10. That's of course going to be Lancia. Coral Dragon gives me the draw, and then I'm gonna pass over to them, leaving these tokens up just to have some Ice Barrier names on the field, but... Okay, so they lead with Into the Void. I immediately knew they were up to some amount of shenanigans here. Dark Hole, I'm of course going to have to negate with the Barrel Diffler so that my board survives. But I suspected that another board wipe is going to just immediately follow, and sure enough, Raigeki comes down right afterward. Alright, so we lose our board here, but we do get the Lancia effect. Opponent's going to chain a Maxi to get an extra draw out of this, and because this special summon in particular is treated as a Synchro summon, what I'm going to go for here is Trishula. I want to hand grip them and see if I can't disrupt their strategy a little bit. So the Trishula is going to banish the sea out of the graveyard, and then what we actually end up ripping out of their hand is the Dumateth. This might not seem like a very good hand rip at first glance, but... you know, the opponent's list is on 3 Mseti, but only, I believe, 1 of each of the other Horus monsters, so this has already greatly reduced their ability to OTK, especially considering that, you know, the Dumateth is the one that gains attack for each Horus you control. So as soon as I saw the Dumateth get ripped, and I saw all these cards, that's when I kind of figured out what was going on here. I'm like, okay, so it's a Horus OTK deck, so not only was this a really good banish, even though, again, it might not look like it at a glance, but having the Trishula body on the field is also very good here. So next up, we're going to go for the Walls of the Imperial Tomb, activating to add the Mseti, and then put a card back. I already see where I want to Maxi this turn. It's actually going to be in response to the Mseti pitching itself in Lava Golem. Because the Mseti will draw a card in addition to adding the King Sark, I don't want them to draw like an Ash Blossom here. So we're going to Maxi now while they have 0 cards in hand, and they guaranteed can't, you know, negate it. King Sark coming down. King Sark's going to activate, pitching the Dogmatica trap card. They get to revive Mseti and Hoppy here, giving me 2 draws, moving to battle. They're going to send the Trishula with the King Sark F and then hit me for 3k with Mseti. So this is two very, very good draws here. Another very good top deck as well. Just a lot of ice. We drew like all gas this game, except for the Maxi, but yeah, here they don't have any disruption, so I'm just going to go for the Revealer, summon the Georgius, and actually because I have the Speaker in the yard, I get that extra level 1 token, so instead of sinking for 10, I'm going to sink for 11. What's a level 11, you might ask? Well, Trishula Zero Dragon is level 11, and when this is Synchro Summon, I can banish 3 of my opponent's cards, so there goes their Horus monsters and their King Sark. Now they don't have any Horus monsters in the yard, and even if I don't find lethal here, which I actually don't know if I'd be able to in this situation, they're still in top deck mode. Granted, they do have the field spell on the field, but like that's not King Sark, right? I mean, the name is King Sark, but they can't use it to discard to add stuff. So even if they added the Imseti off of it, they'd have to put back their other card and then wouldn't be able to use Imseti. So yeah, that's a pretty solid W there, despite all of our opponents' board wipes and shenanigans. But yeah, just want to show off those games again with Ice Barrier. I do really like this deck, and even if I said during the profile I don't play it enough to craft certain new wars, that doesn't mean I don't enjoy playing it, but I do pick it up. So hopefully you enjoyed these games as well. But that'll do it for this one. Let us go ahead and just move on to the outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's again free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.